Right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's 3:02 p.m. on Tuesday, June 20th. I'd like to announce that this meeting is being recorded, and I'd also like to announce that two of our directors are teleconferencing under the Ralph M. Brown Act. Board member Olivia Craig is teleconferencing from 9252 Breezy Point Drive, Breezy Point, Minnesota 56472 per government code 54953B. Board member Ella Schultz is teleconferencing under the same act from 1644 North Broadway, Walnut Creek, California 94596 per government code 54953B. The agenda has been posted at both of these locations for 24 hours prior to this meeting, and the location provides the opportunity for the public members to address the board. All votes during this meeting will be roll call votes. Jonathan, can I have a roll call for attendance?
Director Aguilar?
Here.
Topliff?
Here.
Freeman?
Here.
Deschler?
Here.
Director Brandt is absent. Schultz?
Here.
And Director Craig is not here yet, but she does plan to join.
All right, thank you for that. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Chumash people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders past, present, and future who call this place Inisquoyo that Isla Vista sits upon their home. We are proud to continue the tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. At this point, I'd like to move to the public comment period. At this time, any member of the public may speak on matters within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Board of Directors that are not on the agenda. The board will not take action on any item not on the agenda except as provided by law. Do any members of the public wish to speak?
I just wanted to mention, we got one email public comment that I wasn't able to forward to you all in time. So I will mention it. I'll send it now, but it's Maya, who's a resident of Isla Vista, and it looks like she supports the option 3 in what she's saying. And I just want to clarify one thing. It says she supports IVCSD's recommendation, and in the attachment, it says CSD recommends this option for one of the options. But that's county CSD. That's like county. Yeah, it's county. We don't support any of these options yet, but it looks like we support one. So I just want to clarify.
Why
she thinks what our recommendation is, but it's just meaning option 3. So.
All right, thank you very much for sharing that. Now we'll move on to Section 3, discussion action items. 3.1, the consideration of Santa Barbara Community Services Department, that's CSD, options for Isla Vista Book Van Administration.
Okay, so just to give some introduction, more on this is, we've been following along over the years, and even just 2 meetings ago, we submitted a letter to the county Community Services Department outlining what our priorities were for library services in Isla Vista. This is now that department taking an action to the Library Advisory Committee for different options of how to move forward using Isla Vista's per capita funding to provide library services. So the Library Advisory Committee makes recommendations to the Board of Supervisors, so it's not a final decision, but it's one of the steps in how these things are, how these decisions are made for the spending of the per capita. And that committee, goes to the Board of Supervisors. We don't know when. It's not like it's next Tuesday. But this is the next step tomorrow. So that's why hence the rushed meeting. We didn't know. We got the agenda on Friday morning, just like everyone else. And so we then said maybe we should take a position on this. So one thing, so the 3 options before us are to keep the status quo for 5 hours, like what the possible status quo is for the book van, which is 5 hours a week. Option 2 is the county providing $50,000 to the city of Goleta on top of the per capita funding to enhance the book van. Or option 3, which is to change IV's library zone administrator from City of Goleta to City of Santa Barbara. for the 20 hours per week. So those are like the three options that the county is saying are on the table when that staff report was written. And our committee didn't decide to make any recommendations and just to have us to just discuss. And we don't have to take a position on any of these, but if we did want to make our voice known in this process, it would be weighted, it would be given heavy weight. They did attach our letter that we already had written to their staff report. So they do know where we stand in terms of we don't want to reduce under 20, and we want a midterm future of a reading room and the different areas. So they do see what our priorities are, but now that it's getting to the specifics of how to actually do those priorities, we may or may not want to take a position on that. And so also attached is the city of Santa Barbara's proposal for what they would do with the per capita funding if the county switched it. And we also have James Kiriako, council member at the city of Goleta. I don't think representing the city, but happy to answer. He's here to happy to answer questions, I think, too. So.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yes, please ask.
So there's in the drive, there's two things posted. There's the CSD recommendation. It's the overview
yes.
of all the library, the agenda, and then their overview of all the zones. And then there's an image. And can you just tell me what that image is?
The image was just from the city of Goleta budget documents.
Okay.
Just additional information of should be 50,000 be allocated to support the services from the city budget, because it had been a request made of the county originally.
So that this image is what the city of Goleta would do if the county proposes adding $50,000.
It's if the county doesn't give it 50,000.
Doesn't?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like if option A was pursued, then that might be one of the next steps.
Little music break. Okay. Does everyone understand about the image? Am I the only one who's clueless?
I didn't look at it before.
Oh.
Yeah, I
Okay.
just received it as earlier, but what I can explain is the staff at the city is asking if the council wants to allocate additional funds, because I think we talked to you guys about it at the last time in the May 23rd meeting, where the city had said they'd put 50,000, but then we're asking the county to put 50,000. So this is to make up the 100,000 needed. But this is asking the council, should we just use the city's money for that additional 50,000?
I think there's some legitimate confusion on the idea that there's both of the amounts of money are 50,000. So
Yeah.
At some level,
Right.
the three options can be looked at as far as whether or not the county gives Goleta $0, $50,000, or $100,000, and then the side effect on who else gets what other money is interesting.
When would the city vote on this? City of Goleta.
I think it's tonight, right?
Sorry. Okay.
Interesting.
Okay.
I actually have a question.
Yeah.
Please.
I apparently did not understand that part, and that sounds very important. What is the city of Goleta voting on?
Yeah. if you want.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I want to respect your process and not
Yeah.
just
Oh.
like blurt.
We don't really have a process.
So hi, I'm James. I'm the city of Goleta. So first of all, I can tell you that realistically speaking, the chances of the city voting tonight to continue asking for $50,000 from the county is not terribly realistic, in my opinion.
That's the question.
So
That's what they're voting
So
on.
that's the first thing. The second thing, to kind of address the earlier point about which 50 and which funds, it's actually more confusing than that. So a couple of things. There's different funding sources that the city puts into libraries depending upon where you live. So if you live in the unincorporated Eastern Goleta Valley or the city of Goleta, you pay a library specific parcel tax called Measure L. So those people have a county per capita contribution because the county is very generous. And then they also pay into Measure L. Some of those people are unincorporated, some of those folks are incorporated. Then you have Isla Vista and Hope Branch. They don't pay into Measure L. they pay per capita, just like anyone else, right? And we also thank the county for their contributions. So there's those sources of funds, then there's city general funds, and then there was the Isla Vista book grant, which has since expired. One thing that I think has been not terribly clear in the last couple of months as the city and the county have tried to work this out amongst ourselves is that the city currently, for the current year budget, allocated $43,200 of county per capita, what some people would call the Isla Vista share of per capita to finish out the term of the book grant. So that wasn't general fund city funding, that was county general fund funding. One of the things that we're going to talk about tonight is whether or not per capita funding, whether you want to say it's Isla Vista share or anyone else's share, the way it comes to us is in a bucket for our entire unincorporated population, which for perspective, the county has like 140,000 unincorporated folks, and we serve 65,000 of them in our zone. So we get about a quarter of the per capita, but we serve about 44% of the unincorporated area, just for background. So we're going to talk tonight about, do we want to do 100,000 general fund for book fan? How much per capita should we do for the book fan? Should we continue doing 43,200? Should we up that? Should we lower that? So we'll be talking about that. And then whether or not any Measure L funds should go to support areas that are non-Isla Vista to provide service. From an equity perspective, Isla Vista, hilariously, is actually the second biggest unincorporated area we serve. The Eastern Gleta Valley, a census designated place is bigger. And they don't have a book van at all. And some of them travel further to get to our branch than Isla Vista residents, depending upon where you live. Libraries are just weird. Just the whole thing is weird. And I think what the city's been trying to do is to go to the county from a place of equity and say, hey, we want to take the Isla Vista show on the road and serve Isla Vista and others. But if you want to specifically designate X number of hours to Isla Vista going forward, if you put in 50,000, that would buy 10 hours. So then here's where it gets really convoluted. I asked our staff at our last city council meeting, can you just tell me from a budgetary perspective, how much does it cost to run the book fan? Because we don't have it. If you look in the library advisory committee, there is no Isla Vista book fan budget historically, right? It's just, there's a grant, there's a fund, there's some resources, et cetera, but not like a full-on base budget. If you look at Santa Maria's, they do 16 hours a week and it costs about 135,000. We were saying to the county, we would do 10 hours for 50 grand. So you could argue, oh, you should be able to do 20 hours for 100 grand, right? And that's more than your per capita. But what it doesn't account for is administrative costs, the cost of black gold, the cost of gas, all that kind of thing. So we're going to make a determination tonight of how much total funding we want to fund the book fan. And based on that, we'll get a certain number of hours of estimated service out of that. I'm going to be recommending tonight that we put in enough funding from all the different pots to be able to do 30 hours of book fan, and that no less than 20 continue to go to Isla Vista. We will lose money on that. Just to be clear, we won't actually make back there won't be any administrative costs recouped. Our staff told us it costs between $155,000 and $180,000 to do 20 hours a week. So when we said 50,000 for 10 hours, we were significantly shorting ourselves in our negotiations with the county. We were almost negotiating against ourselves. But we've heard the county loud and clear. I think tonight we will vote to move on from that and inform the CSD, the county CSD, that we are not asking them for any money anymore. If they want to put more in, they can. I want to close with one last thing though. When I made the recommendation in April of 2020 to go forward with the book fan program based on Senator Lemone's grant, just a couple things. One is that was a legislative ask of the city. It was the same as if we had asked for money for the Elwood Sperling Preserve or for San Jose Creek repairs. It was a legislative ask. Hired our lobbyist. She went to work. We originally told, you're not going to get it. We found out like at the last minute, you're going to get it. We hadn't even told the 3rd district supervisor yet. She found out about it from the news. So it was kind of a mess. But now I just lost my train of thought. It'll come back to me. So basically, we're not truly recuperating our costs, but it's worth it to us to continue to try and grow the partnership. My original recommendation was to do book van and to work with the CSD on up to 3 days per week of satellite library services. So the irony, to kind of bring it all the way back to today, is what my motion was, which was unanimously supported a month into the pandemic, was for book van and satellite library services. That matches up with what you're saying your priorities are today. You want library services in person, and you want kind of mobile library services. You want to have a fixed place, and then you want to have the show go on the road and get into the nooks and crannies of your community that aren't traditionally served, that are traditionally underserved. I believe that's what my council's priorities are. I'm going to remind them of that tonight. I feel confident that they'll be supportive. I can talk to one council member and she's supportive. I'm hopeful that we will be able to come forward tomorrow and speak to the County Library Advisory Committee and say, hey, never mind about the $5,000. We're going to continue service to Isla Vista at 20 hours a week. And then if the county still wants to go forward with a different vendor, then that is their right to recommend that. And then the County Board of Supervisors will hear it. But one of my mentors, Roger Horton, used to always say, if you have time, use it. And right now I feel like you have time and we have time. So there's two important data points. There's what's going to happen at tomorrow's Library Advisory Committee. And then there's what's going to happen at the Board of Supervisors at a to be determined date in the future, which Jonathan referenced. So what I would ask of you is that you hold off on making any recommendation tonight. Wait and see what the city of Goleta actually does, because I can flap my gums at you all night about how much we care about IV. But at the end of the day, our budget will do the talking, right? So what I would ask is that you hold off on any recommendation until you see what the city does, see what the Library Advisory Committee does, and then make a decision on what you think would best serve your constituents. Much like we want to best serve our constituents. And the last thing I'll say, and this is not a shot at any other agency, but currently what you have, it's still maybe some bumps in the road. We're still kind of working out the kinks of how the relationship works, right? But you have a vested right as the Isla Vista Community Services District right now, from a policy perspective. You have one seat on a 5-member board. That is statutorily yours. And that commission makes recommendations to us on how to serve the community and how to serve the community specifically through libraries. We don't have any city charter conflicts that would prevent you from having representation, because you already have representation. The unincorporated Eastern Goleta Valley also has representation. The Goleta Valley Public Library Board, and some of you know this because you've been on it, is a minority of City of Goleta and a majority of unincorporated, with one specific Isla Vista seat. If you look at the proposal from the City of Santa Barbara, I don't believe in that book van proposal it promises you a seat on the 5-member library board for the City of Santa Barbara, which makes recommendations to the City Council on how to handle library services. I just want to make sure that in a larger conversation about dollars and cents, you don't lose sight of the fact that you currently have influence, and it's baked into the process. And we want to partner with you, and we hope that we'll be able to continue partnering with you.
Director Freeman.
Before you feel too bad about the things I say at the beginning of this, it goes in the direction you might like.
Oh,
So for what it's worth, I've been the person at many of these meetings who's pushed fairly strongly on the city of Goleta, and particularly on our relationship with the library. I was on the Library Advisory Commission on that particular seat for at least 2 years, and I honestly had felt at times like the purpose of that board was to almost string me along at times, to take a really, really negative view of it. The premise was, rather than discussing a lot of the issues that seemed pertinent to the library, including something that the library themselves wanted to do, which was to remove fines for late fines. This was something that, despite having brought it up numerous times and the library staff saying that they wanted to do it, it wasn't until I finally was removed from the board and asked to not show up to a meeting, that they finally decided to do a vote on the thing that I wanted them to do 2 years earlier. And by not removed from the board, by like, it was because we replaced me with Marcos, but then there was like a month where we didn't actually have representation on there, and that's when that was the agenda. I found that the process of that advisory board somewhat frustrating. And at the same time, though, I do think it was valuable to have that kind of discussion forum and to have the opportunity every month to talk with and interface with the library staff. I also have been somebody who has sat here on many occasions and has pushed on the usage of the funds that were taken from Monique Lamont, or not taken from Monique, that Monique managed to get from the state. And I have felt that the book van that was purchased with that then is suddenly not able to be funded anymore in order to be able to come to us at times. We essentially feel like we're having to wrestle funds out of Goleta in order to be able to make that happen, has been somewhat unfair, given that I look at that book van and I think, that was supposed to be for capital improvements for a library in Isla Vista, and that book van is in some sense our book van, and I can get really frustrated about that. As the person who has said all of those things, I am not at all excited to be here today and try to be like, oh yeah, no, I want to take money away from Goleta. And I've got a number of reasons why. One of which is that Goleta is the city that's right next to us. It's a city that we interface with on all sorts of things. And the idea that we're essentially in this like weirdly haphazard antagonistic relationship that's been thrown like over the course of the next 2 days, we're like frantically trying to figure out how to rip away part of their budget and turn this into a giant argument. It feels bad. It feels wrong. It feels like a wrong way of doing this kind of interaction. This is something that I would have wanted to take a much longer period of time to think about it, to do. This is something where there's been notes about, what is Santa Barbara actually offering us, the 20 hours, but, we're not getting influence, we're doing some external contracting. Why are they doing it? Do I feel like Santa Barbara will continue to offer that same thing when we go to do a contract renewal? I don't know. I have not really even had an opportunity to talk to people at Santa Barbara at all. There was one meeting that was not a full committee, even our full library committee meeting, where we were able to talk to people from the library. Mostly this has been negotiated by the county. County went in and decided that they don't really like whatever's going on with the whole library thing. And they've decided to stir the pot, as I feel the county often does with relation to libraries, and has now gone to Santa Barbara and has managed to drag an option out of them. And this, by the way, is after they kind of put us through a fire drill on another grant proposal where we were suddenly supposed to figure out whether we wanted to knock down walls in this building and try to figure something out. And Jonathan was put on the spot of like, why can't you just figure out how to be a contractor and, decide what wall to knock out? We were in a position.
What are we referring to?
Maybe I don't even remember. Maybe that was not actually brought up to the board yet. But there's been a lot of context that's been going with the county back and forth for our little library committee over the course of the last 2 months about stuff to do with relating to our budget with Goleta and with possibility of Santa Barbara. And this was a grant opportunity from the state. Would have required us to come up with matching funds. It was going to require and all sorts of things. And it just felt like we were just kind of being jerked around by the county the whole time. And now I just feel like it's just like. Suddenly there's this panic where it's just like last week we find out that we're going to be on the agenda of this meeting tomorrow before Goleta has a chance to figure out what they're willing to offer us. And we're supposed to make we're being pressured, in fact, to kind of provide some kind of opinion on like switching all of our funds over to Santa Barbara. And I just don't feel ready to do that. I want to figure out if it's possible to work with Goleta. I want to see if Goleta is willing to, figure out how to make this work with us. And I would want to spend time really figuring out whether or not I think Santa Barbara is going to do this in the long term. Because the last thing I want to do is to essentially sever a relationship with Goleta. Potentially then, we've already got the seat that was, there was some fraughtness there, but we have that seat on that board. We're going to end up, getting removed from there. Then we're going to end up, ripping away part of their budget. They're going to figure out what to do about that. We're going to then hand a bunch of money over to Santa Barbara. And then a year or two from now, something's going to change over there. And we're going to be coming back to Goleta hat in hand, being like, please take us back. And they're going to think it's really awkward. Well, you torpedoed our relationship before over the course of a 72-hour frantic, discussion process that didn't really give us an opportunity to respond. And then they're going to be like, okay, well, you can do this, but do I really feel confident that we're going to get back on that board? That we're going to be able to, we already filled that seat with somebody else. We're going to have to remove that person. There's all sorts of stuff. It's just going to be brutal. And I just don't want to do that unless I feel really confident in the other thing. And again, this is coming from the person who has oftentimes been up here being the person who's like forcibly saying that I feel like this went really poorly, but like, I don't feel like it went poorly enough that I'm ready to just cut cut ties and move on this, like, again, like 72 hours notice when we got an agenda for a meeting next tomorrow. So I wasn't comfortable at our committee level making any kind of recommendation. I'm honestly even less comfortable today making any kind of recommendation than I was even 2 days ago when we were talking about this. So I am not, like, I am not going to be like, yeah, I want to like move money over to Santa Barbara. That's just not, that's not my thing. So.
So you don't feel strongly?
I want to say that, like, it's possible that I would want to end up doing that, but I would want to do that after hearing from Goleta, see what they want to do. Like, for example, if Goleta came back and was like, no, we just don't want to fund this book ban anymore. But and Santa Barbara, after a bunch of negotiations with them, they were like, oh yeah, actually, we're willing to, put this in our term. We're willing to figure out this way of giving you influence, something. Like, I would want to like figure out some way of like really balancing the two things and making an informed decision. But as it currently stands, we've got a lot of with Goleta. I think we've got a lot to lose by essentially like leaving Goleta. And I don't want to do that today.
I just want to ask if any other directors have questions right now about like the information, because Jay provided a lot of context that was like very useful for me, who's been paying attention the whole time, but that might be like that you covered like 5 years of time, even years I wasn't a part of it. But I've been able to cover it because I've been in these conversations, but I want to make sure that other directors like understand like these different moving parts, because there are literal moving parts and dollars that have moved from one bucket to a different bucket that were created through per capita and these kinds of complexities. So I want to make sure that like our directors like understand what's going on.
I don't understand.
You don't understand.
I have questions.
Please ask your question.
Okay, so what, and I don't know who I'm asking, so I'll just throw it out there.
Yeah.
So the per capita funding right now, Isla Vista doesn't have a parcel tax, but we have the per capita. Per capita goes to the county. No, goes to Goleta.
From the county.
From the county to.
From the county, right, goes from the county to Goleta, all of it, okay. And so under the proposal from the other CSD, what would happen to that per capita funding that now goes to Goleta?
So there's 3 options. 2 of them keep the per capita with Goleta, and one of them is to move that money to Santa Barbara.
That's what, okay, so that's what we're talking about. So we're not talking about 50 grand, we're talking about all the per capita funding.
Possibly. I mean, one of the options is, should the county give Goleta 50 grand?
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't 43. That wasn't the 43 grand. Remember, I got
Seven.
No,
it was 70 something.
No, just these are 2 different things, the 43 and the 50.
Yeah, I know that part. But well, how much is the total per capita?
150.
150. Okay,
158.
so I said something wrong.
And some change.
Was that there was both 50.
Going up
Yeah.
to 163.
Right,
Yeah, they're going
Yeah,
up.
much higher.
Yeah. It's been incredibly confusing. The county had all of us believing that they actually were giving 204,000 and change to Goleta in per capita for IV. And this was back in 2020, when you sent your letter and Spencer sent his letter. So when I made the motion to like, let's do this, and our staff was saying, well, wait, what about ongoing costs? In my mind, I'm thinking we're getting 204,000. I haven't seen county per capita get cut in the years since then. So reasonably, in my brain, I'm thinking, oh, there's a pretty good chunk of per capita there, right? The county then tells us, oh, it's actually 155 to 158, but it's going to be 163. So the hilarious thing about all this is the delta between what we asked for, the 50,000 plus the per capita, is almost the same amount of money as what we thought we were getting when we got ourselves into this. So that's kind of the funny thing, to the extent that any of this is funny, because we're talking about literacy at the end of the day, and access, but we're also talking about government and politics. And
You said the true cost to operate the van is 155 to 180?
that is
20
what
hours or?
that is what my staff told me in response to a direct question at our last budget hearing. Jaime Valdez gave me that answer when I asked, what would it cost us if we just did 20 hours for IV from the book ban? What would it cost? And he said it would be between 155 and 180. 180 is if we added the Black Gold share. If we treated Isla Vista as if it was a branch, and we build admin fees to Isla Vista as if it were a branch, and if we build marketing and collections and Black Gold and all that stuff, and we treated you like you were a branch, but just, a mobile branch, so to speak, then it would be closer to 180. But that if we just did it without going for cost recovery, it's 155, which is significantly more than we were asking from the county for just 10 hours. I mean, just, you know, if we had asked the county for 20 hours in exchange for 100,000, when the true cost is between 155 and 180, you can see we're not making any money on the endeavor. And if you look at Santa Maria, and it's actually in your packet, their budget, they spend about 135,000 on the book van. If you go to the Santa Maria Public Library website for their book van schedule, it's 16 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like 25% less service at 135,000 a year or whatever it is. So, I mean, I feel like what we're putting forward is pretty competitive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's competitive compared to Santa Barbara too. I don't want to put down Santa Barbara because I think they do a really good job at what they do. But I was offered the opportunity to zoom in. This was too important to me personally to just be a little box on the screen. I wanted to come and show up like, and I've got closed session in an hour. Because to demonstrate that this is important, that I'm committed to this. I have a Brown Act partner who's committed to this, and we're gonna try and solve this hopefully tonight.
How many hours, thank you. How many hours is the van right now in Isla Vista? 20. So then this would be status quo. Okay. And so you had mentioned about Eastern Goleta Valley having some portion, maybe you would augment the 20 hours. That's just
No, it wouldn't be the 20. It would be a value added, not a taking from.
Yeah.
Um,
30.
we've gone from 10 hours of book ban and 20 if the county plays to 20 no matter if the county plays to we're going to try for 30 tonight.
So,
And then my vision would be for 10 of that to go somewhere else through other funding sources, not your per capita. And then
I guess my question is, this is super confusing, but my question is, if the costs are closer to 155 to 180, and you're saying that Goleta would, in your motion, you're proposing status quo, essentially 20 hours. Why would the city of Goleta not ask the county for additional 50,000 to at least come somewhat closer to your true costs?
at a certain point, a $40 million agency fighting with $1 billion agency over $50,000 just becomes
Got it.
silly.
Got it.
I don't want to fight.
Got it. Okay.
You go to the county, ask for that, and the county takes away the other 200, the other 150.
We're in discussions with them about law enforcement contracts where what we're talking about here is like a rounding error.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Okay.
You know,
And then Jonathan, so when we sent this letter, we sent it to the Community Development Department. And what date was that we sent this?
May 24th.
And then we just heard on Friday that they've agendized this issue.
We knew that it was being considered,
Yeah.
but we didn't know that we should weigh in.
Mm-hmm.
That was asked, and that the decision was being, a decision like that was being made. I mean, we knew that they heard us and that they were looking at
Mm-hmm.
how they could respond to our requests.
Mhm.
We had even met with the city and we had heard from them,
Which city?
city of Santa Barbara.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because when I hear the city, I think
Right,
Goleta.
right.
So, you know.
I was
So- So we heard from them, but the request to take action to support one of the options, that was on Friday.
I informed the Community Services Department Director, George Chapchin, that we were adding the 50,000 and we were going to be discussing it tonight
Mhm.
about an hour before the packet went out.
Well,
And then my next email to him was, can we talk? I just saw the packet.
mhm. Mhm. Do you have the sense that the Community Development Department wants to hear from us in terms of what we think of these three options?
I think, I think our opinion will be heavily weighted no matter what it is.
Okay. Okay, so what I was thinking is that if for whatever reason Goleta doesn't support, if we just choose to go, say, support Goleta, go with that proposal, but then Goleta votes in opposition to this, then what do we do? We might need a contingency for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Currently, they're operating under the letter we sent them, which was that we want 20 hours of book ban. So I would imagine that if we don't say anything today and Goleta does not provide a plan that gives 20 hours of book ban, then the county
Will have that information.
Yeah, we'll look at that and be like, well, the CSD really wanted, the IVCSD really wanted 20 hours of book ban, so we should give this that.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, my questions have been answered. I think Ellis.
Yeah.
has a
Yes, Ella, please.
Okay, so bear with me. Director Freeman was saying that if we were to take the third option stance and right now and shift that per capita, we could potentially damage the relationship with Goleta. Is that correct?
That is what my belief would be, yes. This to me seems like a weird moment to suddenly do that, before they've even had a chance
Okay.
to respond.
So hypothetically, if we were not to take a stance today, would we just be bringing this agenda item back on Tuesday after we've seen what Goleta says tonight and tomorrow?
I mean, yes, and the committee is meeting tomorrow and considering these options, like the County Library Advisory Committee. So if we don't take a stance, I mean, they will know that we didn't take a stance. It's like but they might take action. We don't know what they will do, but we know that we can put out our opinion and it will be weighed heavily. But we don't know what the committee will do because it's, we're not on it. We don't have a direct representative on there.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to ask quickly, so I think we heard, you and I, Jonathan, heard before that there's potential for Isla Vista, for the CSD to have a seat on this county library advisory board, and that it's something that could happen in the future, or there is a space for. Did we ever hear that?
I'm not 100% remembering.
Okay.
Right now.
Then, yeah. I guess my bigger clarification question is that, or clarification statement is that currently we do not have the deciding power of where this per capita dollar goes to.
Yeah.
But we do have the weight of recommending where we think it should go to, and whatever we recommend as a board will probably be what happens. But these are the three options. We don't have to choose one of the three. We don't have to choose anything, as Director Freeman was sharing. But currently we don't have that power ourselves. In the future, that's a power that could become ours, correct?
It's potential. If we got the money allocated to us, then we could decide where it goes. But until then.
Director Freeman.
There's actually, leads into, I want to talk about that, but I want to first go back and say that another response to Ella's question, which also ties into something James had said earlier, is that so this is a library advisory committee for the county that is going to make a recommendation to the county board of supervisors on what to do. So there is an opportunity for, if they recommend something, for us to then, when it goes to the board of supervisors, push in a different direction. So it's not quite like, it's like, yeah, so this committee is going to know that we didn't make a recommendation tomorrow. Right. And then they will, in their thing, our recommendation is as follows, based on what we had known from the CSD. And then we can show up to the board of supervisors and explain the situation, that we were on such short notice and that we were waiting for a Goleta, and that maybe we want specifically to stay with Goleta because they did something, or not, the opposite. So I don't think that we are necessarily in a position where we absolutely actually have to do something today, although going against then the committee's recommendation will be slightly harder when we get to the board of supervisors, but I don't even think a lot harder necessarily. The second thing I wanted to talk about, because James has hand up, but I realized I'm not the person to call on it. He's not getting called on. Is this what Jonathan has brought up, which is something that had come up, which I find very exciting possibility, and maybe it's something that we want to try to use this snafu to make happen, which is that the people of Isla Vista pay money to the county, and then the county takes that money and allocates it to somebody to give library services to this area. And so right now they're giving that money to Goleta, they're considering giving that money to Santa Barbara, and there's a possibility that we can ask them to give that money to us, and then we can give that money to Goleta. And that doesn't change the situation immediately between us and Goleta, but it gives us the flexibility to then later on do decisions that don't have to involve the county. 'Cause I find the process of getting pushed around by the county on this really annoying. And I think that even if we wanted to, for example, just think certainly you can feel like, even if it's not about taking it away from you later, it's about keeping it with you. The county is the one that's pushing us right now to take it away from you. They're the one who said, we talked to Santa Barbara, we came up with the idea to do this, we're trying to do yada. If we wanted to keep it with you, we're in some sense fighting them a bit. And so, but getting the money allocated to us, I think that we're in a better position locally to work with our local partners on our local agendas and make it so that people can stay locally happy. And so if there's a possibility during this process right now, because there is a bunch of strife, to be like, we're not ready to make a recommendation on Goleta to Santa Barbara, but we are ready to make a recommendation, a very strong recommendation to give us that money, so that we can decide who gets the money, and then we can immediately reallocate it to Goleta for now, because they're the people who are actually providing a possible service for us. I would support that strongly right now if we were interested in that.
Okay. Did the county ever go to Goleta and ask Goleta to provide a proposal for 20 hours of service? No. Okay. I don't understand how the Santa Barbara Library can provide a service for this amount of money when Goleta, the true costs are between $155 and $180. It seems very surprising to me. I don't understand the numbers. It looks like a wish list of a lot of amazing things, but I don't understand. I think it's weird to me to see all this from the Santa Barbara Public Library. I don't understand how they can afford this.
So on
It's
the,
just mostly, I just feel like it's kind of smoke and mirrors a little bit.
on the draft sheet, there's like a number of increases in their projected, and then there's notes that kind of show the reason for why these things like aren't current for us.
Yeah.
And it is like, like for example, one of them is city overhead for human resources, finance, etc. Nothing first year, but the next year it's $36,000. And there's numerous of those. So their total expenditures for projected this year zero thing is 165.
Right.
And then the next one jumps up to 242.
Right. Yeah. No, I saw the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Okay. I have no questions. Oh, I have another question.
Please ask the question.
Okay, so I just want to be really clear on these three options. So the three options are, okay, let me just,
And I guess I'll just say, it's really like two options now, like,
yeah,
Goleta is saying they're not asking for that 50,000
Yeah.
anymore, so it's
we really don't want any of these. How we're talking right now, none of these options make sense unless we were to tweak option 2 and say, increase county contribution to City of Goleta by 100,000
Well,
for
option
20 hours a week.
Option 1 says 5 hours, but that's not them doing the 5 hours. Goleta might be willing to provide 20 hours for
Yeah.
the money from option 1. So
Yeah.
it's not clear that none of these are what we want.
yeah, the options I guess are not, like, Goleta's not asking for the 50,000, and
Yeah.
if they finalize their action today, it could be
Yeah.
5, it could be 10, it could be 20. We don't know where the council will go, but it is either status quo with some, 5 to 20 hours with Goleta, or option 3 with the proposed 20 from the city of Santa Barbara.
Yeah,
It's a little confusing because option 3 begins with the word status quo, but they just mean the status quo amount of money. They don't mean the
Yeah.
status
Yeah,
quo.
Like status quo 162, yeah.
okay, we'll have a proposal later. Did
Okay.
Olivia come on board?
Yeah.
She's not gonna be able to make it
Okay.
until 4 or after.
Okay.
Okay.
Ella has her hand up.
Okay. Yeah. Director Schultz.
I'm sorry, Jonathan, could you repeat the two new options? The sound cut out for a second.
Yeah, no problem. It cut out on our end too. The options are looking more like what says here, option 1, status quo county funding for like the 162 per capita to the city of Goleta, keep our money there. And they will provide 5 to 20 hours of book van. That's not finalized yet. It won't be final until today, what they will be able to provide. So that's option one, is sticking with Goleta and seeing what they can do. And option three is keeping the same amount of county money, 162, but moving that money from Goleta to Santa Barbara to provide this 20-hour proposal that's in the attachment.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
And maybe bonus option 4, we take them.
Yes, I mean, these are the options that we can support or not support. We can always say, yes, we support something totally different than any of these two.
This is an annual decision that gets made? This happens on an annual basis?
I don't know enough to say yes, but I think yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll have the same conversation next year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Possibly though with a different set of incentives, because like right now, there's like a bunch of like potential chaos that might allow for that bonus.
Yeah, it might be
option
different,
four.
but we'll be considering library issues next year. Okay. Okay.
All right, Director Schultz.
That first option, you said 5 to 20 hours. Would that entirely depend on the amount of funding or what Goleta decides?
Yeah, it's what Goleta decides to fund. So it's on the amount of funding that Goleta decides, because the status quo is 162, but Goleta may put in additional to make it more than one. The 162 will get you, I guess, the 5 is what I think. Am I right, James? Like, it's the county per capita funding, like no one adding anything, is 5 hours. But if the city council and Goleta adds more funding, which they're deciding tonight, then it could be up to 20.
I think that's,
Okay,
I think
got it.
that's basically right. I mean, I think on some level, what you have to decide tonight is, do you want to kind of say, okay, Goleta, we're going to assume that you're acting in good faith and that you're going to adopt a budget tonight that is not going to like cut library services to Isla Vista. And then you kind of reserve the right to go back to the County Board of Supervisors later and say, we had hoped by not taking a position on taking away per capita from Goleta, that Goleta would provide a similar level of service to Isla Vista. We were then disappointed to learn that their actual budget would do a significant cut in library services to Goleta. We recommend you do X.
We can always go back to these, yeah.
Whatever it is.
Okay.
All right, I don't see any other questions, so I want to be like more clearly specific that it's open for the public to make comment. And so James, you've been sharing with us on and off, but if you have more like of an opine public comment for us, rather than answering the very complicated questions, please do so now. No.
Oh, I see. So, I mean, to respond to Director Freeman, you know, the idea of the funding coming directly to the CSD is intriguing. I mean, the CSD could also just get a check from us for the amount of per capita, and you could do whatever you want with it. I suppose that would be a possibility too, as long as we're being inventive. You know, I think at the end of the day, you just have to kind of decide, like, do you want to continue trying to make it work with Goleta, recognizing perhaps there have been some bumps in the road, perhaps those have been as much between the city and the county as it has been between the city and the CSD, kind of working out the relationship. Perhaps we're working out the relationship a little bit with the Library Commission as well, in terms of some opportunities for improvement there. Or do you kind of want to just go in a different direction and pick a different vendor? I mean, I think you know, at the risk of taking the county side for a second, I think what's motivating the county is they're the customer and we're their vendor. They're trying to serve you as their intended folks, right? And they want to make sure that they're getting what they feel they're paying for. We've been haggling. It's almost like you're a vendor and a business owner haggling about the price, right? And so there's been some of that going on. And I think you just have to decide, do you want to give it a little bit more time and give a chance for Goleta to make it work, which I guess would be either option 1 or 2, maybe with like a strike through on the amount of hours you would get or something. Or if you want to pursue option 3, which would essentially be like, okay, county, yeah, go ahead and pursue this with the city of Santa Barbara, which, as I understand it, would be 12 hours with their bookmobile. So.
Are
All
we
right.
still in the public?
I'm gonna, thank
Okay.
you everyone from the public for your comments. I'm gonna bring it back to the board for board comment. Do any directors have comment? Director Freeman.
So I wanted to clarify, the thing that I find exciting about the potential bonus option 4 is not us doing it ourselves or trying to get the money back from Goleta, or, the idea of, maybe they could get the money and they could hand it back to us, and try to do something interesting with it. It's more that right now the relationship of the parties that are involved here is that the county is the customer, and the county is trying to do what's best for the people of Isla Vista, and they're strongly waiting recommendations from us. But it means that we're kind of like going to them and trying to convince them to make some kind of change to something, or not make a change to something, depending on what's going on. And then it goes to the Board of Supervisors, who has to make a decision on what to end up doing. And I honestly just kind of want to get them out of the business of doing that. And I want to get us out of the business of having to continually be trying to advise them on their schedule as far as what to do. And so to the extent to which we can kind of make ourselves be considered by the county the people who should just directly be making the decision. And I think we're in a very good position to do that, because one of our powers not only sort of allows us to do libraries, not only directly allows us to do libraries, but literally is the word library in the description in the law. Like, this is something that we are like very directly allowed to do. There's a government that happens to have this exact boundary that we're all arguing about, and which the county is trying to make decisions on behalf of. And it's like, how about you allocate that library money to the library community facilities, sorry, the library facilities, community facility, the library community facilities power that the community service district has right here. And then what are we going to do with it? Honestly, I think the best thing that we would do, like, as of in this exact moment, is I would just want to hand the money to Goleta, because it's like Goleta is our vendor then, in the same way that the vendor of the county. But I feel like that as far as like who's arguing with who over where the money should go, it feels a lot better for Goleta to be arguing with us to try to get the money, as opposed to the arguing with the county, where the county's using us as some kind of weird leverage in the discussion about who ends up doing something. It just feels like it's so much more awkward. It feels like it causes, I actually think, more antagonism in the whole thing, because then we're like here on the county schedule trying to make a decision about whether or not we should be making a recommendation to a committee that doesn't even make the final decision. And now we're trying to argue with Goleta over something that we didn't even catalyze the argument today. And it's just, and that's why, like, I think it would be interesting if we were willing to go to the county and take this whole opportunity to be like, look, we're the library district, give us the money. And yeah, we're probably going to, go to somewhere like Goleta and have them do it. But like, now it's not your problem anymore. When people have library issues and they go to the county saying our libraries are weird, you can forward them to us and blame us for it. And they'll come to our public comment and talk to us. And we want that. We want to be the people that people are coming to and asking about library issues. We don't want to have to be constantly arguing through the county to the people who are living right there. So that's my pitch for why we should do that.
Thank you for those comments. Do any other directors have comments I'd like to share?
Well, I'd just like to say that it's certainly been a very interesting and confounding conversation. And somehow I keep thinking about single payer healthcare. And it seems like there's a correlation there somewhere. But I do like the idea that our pro capita money would come to us and that we could decide it, because this seems terribly unnecessarily complicated. So I think that's a wonderful idea. I would certainly support that.
Yes.
So I'll just give my comments. I really don't like the process. I don't like the process and maybe it's just how it's always been, but I kind of share some of your concerns in the sense that we have a lot of per capita funding out there that we're not directly influencing how it's getting spent. We're not able to create our own relationship and have the funding behind us to go out and procure services, right? And I think there's value in that, because this board knows the community better than anyone. So that I hear what you're saying. I don't necessarily agree that the time is now. This is a yearly process. I think that, we just went through a process where we looked at our staff and their workload and their work levels. I don't think we're at that point. I think it's super aspirational. I think it is aspirational. I think it is something that this board should seriously consider engaging in the process early enough that we can influence the outcome of how this funding gets spent. And if it's coming to us, I think we ought to do that. I think there's this term in the census where when boundaries are being drawn that they call communities of interest, right? And I feel like Isla Vista and Goleta are a community of interest. It concerns me a little bit to procure services with the city of Santa Barbara because of they're further away from us, and I think that Goleta is just closer to Isla Vista, not just geographically, but we have a lot of commonality in terms of the populations that we serve. And so I support continuing to work with Goleta. I think that we ought to continue to work with Goleta. I do think that we ought to weigh in to the Library Services Commission for tomorrow. Whatever option, I really can't figure out these options. If it's option one, fine. But I think we need to say exactly what we want. We support this so that when the board meets tomorrow, and one of us should be there.
The three of us will go.
Okay, good. That they understand exactly what we want. That we want to continue working with, if that's what we determine, that we want to continue working with the city of Goleta. And then one thing I'll just say associated with this, we spend a lot of time talking about the value of the book van. I personally would really love to see numbers to know how many people are actually utilizing the book van. I hate to be on a hill fighting for a battle when it might not be a service that's very valued. Maybe there's other services for that amount of money that we're spending that would be more valuable to the community. So when I'm in Isla Vista, I don't see many people frequenting the book van. And so I would like to see us working with Goleta to make sure that we're matching the needs of the community with the services that they're offering. And I think we can do that with better data. But I also think I liked a lot of the things that were in the Santa Barbara Public Library proposal. And I think it would be worth working with Goleta to see if there's some other things that we can be doing with them in our community center. So those are my comments.
Dr. Freeman.
A handful of responses to various things. One of which is the idea of whether now is time to take money. And one of the things you had mentioned was our staff over time, something that I've been caring quite a bit about. But because I'm not actually advocating that we run a library service, I'm merely advocating that a budget get allocated to us, that we can immediately status quo pass through to our current vendor. I'm hoping that wouldn't take very long. Maybe I'm just naive and that would actually end up taking a ridiculously large amount of time in order to pass those checks across. But I would hope that it's just something where it's just adding that as an entry in our budgets, that when the money comes in, it goes to that thing, setting up an account with Finn and then having it so the money goes to Goleta, which I would hope would only
But
be like
nothing we do
hours.
is easy. That, right?
Yeah, but it just the idea then for me is that as opposed to trying to open a discussion with somebody next year, the idea that right now there happens to be some confusion feels really powerful because it's almost like a lucky happenstance that then we're in this position where we don't feel necessarily comfortable making some kind of recommendation because Goleta hasn't had a meeting yet in this whole thing. And it's like, hey, you know what? Why don't you just give us the money and we'll do this later. So that's my first response. My second response is I actually, to put on the hat for Santa Barbara for just a second. You mentioned the community of interest and that we're right next to Goleta, and I agree with that a lot. I mean, clearly, I've been saying that I don't want to harm a relationship with Goleta, and we end up working with Goleta, and also just sometimes on purpose working with Goleta, sometimes kind of accidentally working with Goleta because we've got a giant event going on over here that's causing parking strike throughout the area. We've got to figure out how to coordinate with Goleta because we're causing cars to overflow. And so there's all sorts of reasons why we're very close to Santa Barbara, close to Goleta, but we are not close to the Goleta Library by travel path. And that is whether that's, it's an issue that we're supposed to solve, an issue that the library is supposed to solve, or an issue that SBMTD is supposed to solve. We're constantly in the situation of being like, how do people actually get to that library? And so when I've talked with people about libraries, they've all said, I go to Santa Barbara if I go to a non-UCSB, like I go to the UCSB library, or I go to Santa Barbara. They're going to Santa Barbara, they're getting Santa Barbara library cards. And because of that, it's possible that if we were to take a survey of the people here and ask them, which library are you actually you know, like, would your money have to go to in order to repay for your cost of your existence? It might actually be Santa Barbara. So it's almost sometimes weird to me that the county doesn't do that survey to figure it out. And like, if the survey says that everyone's going to Goleta, then clearly Goleta should get the money. But like, it's just weird, like in that sense, that we don't even really know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
And then the final thing I'll say is the book ban utilization. My understanding Okay, so to go back to what I was saying, the third one was the idea of the book ban utilization potentially being very low. My understanding is the way that the relationship on that book ban had been being worked out, though, was that, sorry to say this, but I feel like the Goleta Library wasn't really into the idea and wasn't really like trying to get it to work. And we've had comments from our staff about different ways that could have gone that would have made it more useful. I've sometimes have looked at it and been like, and maybe there's been some, contention on the board about whether this was the right decision or not, but like, it seemed to be getting utilized a lot when it was at the elementary school. And if it's not getting used as much over here, maybe it should be over there more often. But like, I think that there are opportunities to try to figure out how to increase that utilization. Yeah. And the weird thing is that we actually, despite having a seat on the library advisory commission at Goleta, haven't, as far as I've seen, really had the ability to work with Goleta on how these things happen dynamically, because they'll ask us ahead of time by a year where the book ban should be allocated. And I'm like, well, how about we see what happens? And if the book, no one's using it there, let's move it over there. It's like, no, we need to know today for next year where the van will be. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to correctly budget for it. And I'm like, that seems weird, but like just stuff like that. And so that's why I'm not really like, I would not personally be convinced if you were to tell me that no one uses the book ban. That doesn't mean I wouldn't really be immediately convinced that the book ban is a waste of time.
Yeah.
So that's an issue I have there. Also, there have been other ideas that I haven't even necessarily been on board with. I mean, this specifically is I've got a prop for an idea that is one that I usually advocate against. But Spencer is oftentimes has pushed for, as is Ethan in his past, the idea of thinking about something related to textbooks. This is a textbook that the people who were living next to me threw away in the trash can.
I thought you brought it for like reading later.
No. It says Britta was visiting, and we were moving a bunch of my stuff to the gift sale. There was like furnishings in my furnished apartment that were from the 50s that my landlord said I could finally get rid of, and so bringing those over to the gift sale, and in the process, she's like, "Wait, your neighbors just threw away a bunch of stuff." One of the things they threw away was a perfectly good algorithms textbook, and figuring out some way of like, and this is a kind of out of the box version of maybe the library should think about textbooks, is if people are literally throwing away textbooks, maybe you have an opportunity to have like a gift sale like thing that's like actually operating through the library temporarily, organizing, cataloging, and then redistributing books to the next group, right? And it's just like stuff like that is the kind of out of the box thought that I feel like we would be in a nice position to work with whatever partner that we're in. And somehow it just hadn't worked with Goleta somehow, where those dynamic thoughts never really worked because they wanted to water flow out the whole process, spend a year then discussing the Harwood things, then figure out, and then like allocate back. It was really hard. And so, but I don't really know if Santa Barbara's going to do it. I mean, Santa Barbara, puts forward this little contract, but like, it's just like, I think there's a lot of cool stuff that could be done, but yeah. I don't know. I'm just rambling. So
We like your rambling.
I want to reflect on Jay's like last comment about ideas, and that's what makes me most individually interested about soon, or maybe in the next year, but I'm leaning more towards soon, taking the money into our own decision-making power in the nearer future. And then us either immediately deciding we don't have infrastructure for library services, but we will vend with Goleta, we will vend with Santa Barbara, etc. Because every time we've taken over a power as a district, we've found a huge blind spot and we fixed it with just our own brain power, a lot of staff energy and time, but it has fixed. I look at what's happening right now with move out. This has been an eyesore for Isla Vista for decades. And in a few short years, we've figured out a balance of our own team and our own contracting services to finally start making a dent in move outs like ugly image. I think we have that potential because of this kind of partnership thinking that everyone on this board would be able to dedicate time to. City of Goleta clearly has like tons of other fish to fry. They can't always be thinking about libraries, let alone for their unincorporated areas, but we could provide them that input. Or any other entity, we could provide greater input if we took this money. I think if the money was more direct or more regularly coming into our own budget, it would force us as a board to think about it in that yearly process. The county is being forced to think about it in a yearly process. It continues the overall goal of taking more agency for Isla Vista. That's another reason why I support it. And our long-term goals are to have a physical library here. We like the book van and mobile services, and that reaches more people. But as somebody who works in libraries, I think having a physical presence that's owned, et cetera, in the future by Isla Vista creates community bonding. Our community center already does tons of things that libraries that are more outdated are not very good at. So we already have the huge X factor. The only thing we don't have is the books and the librarians here working for our little district. The field is deep. There's tons of people to find and hire. There's tons of books lying around to literally be sourced. And we're a community with tons of ideas. I wasn't coming into this meeting thinking one of these options was my favorite. But through this conversation and hearing from all these different directors, hearing from you, I am a lot more interested in buying ourselves time and in looking at taking that money into our own decision-making power, just for the sense of agency that Isla Vista deserves, and for the fact that we can do data collection on our own if other entities can't do it for us. We've always kind of shouldered that little extra load to in order better service our neighbors. I think we can do it again here. I think it would be a cakewalk for our district to collect that information. So I'm definitely leaning into this new option X of us taking this pooled money and then making the vendor choice as a district. I don't think that we would have to rush on this 1 year timeline as fast as this meeting that happens tomorrow does. I assume that we'd be able to kind of negotiate with whatever the entities at play are during this like month and a half of summer left before budgets get finalized, but I don't know for sure. Yes.
Oh, I don't want to interrupt you. I just want to speak next.
No, okay. So that's what I'm leaning towards. I am wary that we're falling into the same kind of problems in service with the way that the Sandoval Republic Library draft is, with a bunch of things that we aren't paying for, but we aren't getting right now that soon we will have to pay for, or somebody will have to pay for. I don't like that model. When I think about people who work in libraries and overtime and that kind of a thing, as one of those people, I don't think it's very sustainable, and I don't want to like necessarily support that. There's way more in the weeds conversations about the collection needs and that kind of stuff, like textbooks and what collection is available to serve Isla Vistans, and that could be a whole different conversation of which service provider is better beyond how much it costs. But we don't have time to discuss that right now. We don't have the information to discuss that right now. So I'm leaning towards this option that buys us more time and that allows us to have more agency for our per capita dollars. Yes.
I would, first of all, I'd like to ask a question. Oh, okay, wait. I want to say to James, thank you so much for being here at our meeting. I know that you have a full night of meetings ahead and big discussions at the City of Goleta, and I just want to thank you so much for taking your time and coming and explaining a very complex issue to us in a very great way. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
I wanted to ask a question if anyone knows if there's precedent to unincorporated areas taking their per capita funding to their own back to their budget. Now, while I say that, I know that there's probably not other agencies like ours that have library services written into their their bylaws. But it would be helpful to know if there is precedent to that. And so that's my one comment question. And I would just say, I love the idea of moving toward asking, and it is asking, because nothing with the county and the IVCSD is easy. We know that. We're in multiple negotiations on multiple things. Nothing happens quickly, nothing happens easily. And I think I don't agree that we should be asking for the funding this year. I do agree that we have a library ad hoc committee that I believe should start having those conversations to set the path for next year. Give staff time to figure out what the process is. It is not a pass through. There's a contracting process. There's a bidding process. You're going into summer when city councils are dark. And I just don't think it's quick or easy. And I would hate to have a lapse in services. So I think if we're going to do it, let's do it right. Let's give ourselves time, get the library commission, our ad hoc committee on board. Let's involve our entire board. Spencer has a lot of information on library issues, and Olivia is not here. So I guess I would say, I think it's aspirational. I think we should put that in if we want to discuss it for the future, but I don't think asking for it is the right time right now is the right time. And I don't think we have the processes in place to make this go smoothly. And we need to do things the right way because it conveys a level of maturity and seriousness to the entities that we're working with. If we do things haphazard, it delegitimizes us as a body. So I just put that out there.
I don't think Spencer's not here because we're talking about this. 'Cause
Oh, I thought he was on
actually-
vacation.
He recused himself. from one of
Oh,
our
I'm sorry. I
committee
thought you
meetings.
said he was on vacation.
Yeah.
Oh,
But
I
he
wondered
actually-
about
but He
that.
actually recused himself from one of our committee meetings about it, so that's fine.
Oh, okay. Forget Spencer then. Now what?
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to make sure every director feels like they've been able to share their voice. Did Director Craig ever join?
No, but
Okay.
has her hand up.
Okay, Director Scholes.
Okay, I have a statement, comma, a question. I think that if we were to do option 4, I truly don't know. Would we be able to smoothly do that transition within the time period of this year? Like, does our district have the capabilities to do that? Because if we do, I think that's the right choice. But if not, it should be the right choice in a year from now. I just don't know exactly what the capabilities needed to do that budget switch would be, and if we have those. Do we
Well,
have
I
an
feel like
answer to
they'd
that, or is that just unknown at this point?
They'd probably go as fast as we wanted them to, though, too. I mean, if we're not going to be ready to do it next month, but it's going to be some amount of months. They might say mid-year, but they might not say they might not want to do it mid-year. So
They might say, let's involve county council. Let's
Yeah.
meet with your council.
Yeah, it'll
Let's
take time.
exchange this money for that money. And we have absolutely
take
zero
time.
idea.
Yeah.
We're not in the driver's seat.
And it's
But-
June 20th.
It is, yeah, I mean, it's not
this
gonna
year's over.
happen. I mean, they theoretically could, but it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, that's
And
not
It's
realistic.
so without precedent.
Yeah.
I think it's so without precedent, and I would worry that by us proposing this and them even considering it, it's gonna open a whole can of worms with other entities in Santa Barbara County. That's possible. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
it's-
sorry to be
that's too
cynical.
soon. I agree.
I really feel like nothing happens easy, and this is so out of the box that I worry that it will not go well. I'd rather set the stage, but that's just me. I'm just one of,
I agree with you.
No, I appreciate
We-
hearing from
we're
both
just-
of you about this caution. Yeah, Director Scholes.
If we were to set the stage, would that mean us doing option 1 and hoping that Galena gives us the hours from the book ban that we want?
I would say that setting the stage is us not taking an action. It's likely ends up option 1 because we as a group discussed it very thoroughly, and we said we're not supporting one of these. We're not supporting any of these right now. And we've also talked openly about setting the stage. So then that would leave, my guess is that this advisory council, and then after that, the board of supervisors maintain status quo, and we have this good faith hope. And we heard from one council member, there's a good faith energy to increase the budget for City of Goleta's Isla Vista Book Band services to maintain us at 20. That's my understanding of the setting the stage option.
Yeah. The only thing is the county staff is recommending switching to the city of Santa Barbara. So
I think we do need to make a motion, but I'm not sure it's necessarily one of these options. I think what we need to say is that we strongly support continuing the relationship with the city of Goleta, and we support 20 hours of services per week for a book band.
I like that.
With
I mean,
the word
I
if-
think-
With the word if stuck in the middle,
Sorry?
with the word if stuck in the middle, like
No,
we support working with Goleta if they're willing to give us the 20 hours a week.
And, I mean, I don't.
Whatever-
Yeah, I
whatever.
think that's too rigid. That's our preference, but, you know, it's a negotiation. There's a lot of information we're gonna have to figure out as we go down this path.
Or maybe what we say is we support 20 hours of services. Well, I think if we say 20 hours of services, they could switch us to Santa Barbara.
yeah, your letter already says 20 hours. The
Yeah,
last letter
so-
says
Yeah, so
no
we
less
said
than
20 and we are.
And then we can reference their meeting tonight, right? So if they vote for 20 tonight, then we go tomorrow and we say that this was supported by the city council on such and such evening, and we support continuing to work with City of Goleta, given that they voted on this. We could do that.
Yeah, we would know the result.
We'd know the result. And then the other thing I think we ought to say in a public way is that I think we ought to have a statement that says the IVCSD is one of our functions, as when we were created, was to handle library services. And given that we have directed our library services ad hoc committee to start conversations with the county community services district to work to, I don't know, to whatever.
Yeah.
To look at options whereby the per capita funds goes directly to IVCSD.
Nice.
That's what I would say.
I really
I would
appreciate
second that
that language. I want to opine first. So I support that language. And the reasons why is that we haven't yet had a meeting where we looked at the library book ban and seen it at 20 hours and thought, this is bad, this needs to be improved. We kind of responded to a claim or rumor or
Right.
something written somewhere that it was going to be reduced. And that's when we sounded these alarms and started having these conversations. So I don't think that any of us think that we want to admonish 20 hours of service from the city of Goleta. We want to continue 20 hours of service from any series of library professionals, whether it's Goleta or Santa Barbara. And when I remember that, it makes me dramatically more comfortable with that motion, because we haven't seen this huge failure by Goleta. They've been here and they've shown up every day. They've told us they're going to, and that's good. That's great. That's what we're getting, more than what our per capita dollars are paying for, I guess. And so I'm really happy about that. And I don't want to complain about City of Goleta. I do want to also respect the partnership. We have a seat on their advisory commission, and so that relationship could improve and become more dynamic. Yeah, I'm
She has her hand up.
All right, Director Schultz.
Sorry.
Thank you guys for rescuing me for like 3 different times now. Before I cut out, I want to just second what Marcos just said. I think that's really good, and I think we should make it clear that we want to work with Goleta and we want the 20 hours, and then begin in our library ad hoc to move forward towards trying to get that per capita funding for the next year.
But by cut out, you mean you have to leave?
Oh no, before the
Oh, literally,
the
like, she
sound
knew
cut
that she
out,
was
like,
gonna. You knew it was
She,
gonna
no, she
leave
said
Marco?
before I got cut out.
yeah.
Before the
I just
meeting
didn't know if
cut out,
anything else was said
Oh,
after
I
I
get
lost
it.
volume in my earbuds.
No, what was really great is that you got to the end of that sentence and your video froze.
Okay, well, so Director Deshler, you made some really great statements.
Hope someone wrote it down.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's like a way that we can like rehear those and then hear it
Please,
possibly a
Jonathan.
second.
Oh, Carrie's gonna summarize.
We would like to continue a relationship with the Goleta Library. We would like to have 20 hours a week of a bookmobile. And we would like to direct our ad hoc committee to explore options in the future for our per capita funding to come directly to IVCSD.
Yeah, I would just say instead of in the future, just in the next year.
In the next year.
Yeah,
We'll accept that.
yeah.
This is about as strong as I wanted anyway.
Is that
To be
good?
clear.
Yeah, you're right. I think
Yeah,
we set the stage. I think we set the stage.
by saying it to them, it effectively said, because you didn't just want it to us, you said you wanted like us to say publicly at their meeting that that was.
What should we do if Goleta doesn't give us 20 hours tonight?
Yeah,
Like,
that's
let's
the
say they,
question.
Yeah, that is the question.
Less
Maybe
than-
we need 2 motions.
because that was an
A or
actual
B.
proposal by their staff.
Yeah,
It wasn't,
that's
it
how
wasn't
it's rolled.
random, like their staff proposed cutting to less than 10, so.
The Goleta staff proposed less than 10, but we know that James is gonna be making a motion.
For 20.
For 20, but yeah,
Yeah,
that
we don't
needs
know that it'll be
3
successful.
votes, yeah. 4, I don't know how many votes. More than his.
That's a really good question.
Part of me feels like if they're gonna drop us all the way down to 5 or something, that it kind of starts to be like, why are we working with you if you aren't interested in really doing stuff?
Especially when this, in the recent history, seems to be the first time that like there's been multiple board members discussing like the funding dollar amount, the hours dollar amount. I don't know if that happened in 2019 or in early 2020, if there was conversations about like this many dollars, this
It
many
was really
hours.
specific.
It got really specific back then.
I mean, we could, I guess one option is we go with the county proposal, but we still say this would just be a
We-
temporary
yeah.
one for this year, but we want to work together in the next year because we realize it's too late to take those, the process would be too difficult to take the funds now.
Yeah.
So maybe that the Santa Barbara Public Library would just be a stopgap for 1 year.
You're saying it's like the first statement is like, we accept the recommendation from this county library commission. And number 2, we also intend to like take these dollars in the future or take over the power of
Yeah.
these dollars in the future.
Yeah, we can just express, I think we express our disappointment. If Goleta, it would be very disappointing, and I think that we would want to reflect that we're very disappointed. That we had wanted to continue the relationship with the city of Goleta, but because of budgetary decisions, that didn't happen. Therefore, there's no other real acceptable option on the table except the Santa Barbara Public Library. So that we would recommend that. However, given that the IVCSD has library powers within its charter, whatever.
Yeah.
That we have asked Director of Library Services ad hoc committee to begin working with the county CSD on transferring those funds to IVCSD.
Mhm. So I guess you could make a
Parcel.
motion with like path A or path B.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we want to do.
Do I have a motion from any directors?
You can write, I can
Well,
write it
what
out.
if- what if Galita decides, because like he doesn't, like James doesn't think that we're gonna do this, but what if Galita asks for the extra 50,000 in order to do 20?
They're asking for the
Fine.
They're asking for, then do we back Galita wanting an extra 50,000? Or do we say that don't give Galita the extra 50,000 and, you know, maybe we'll take some reduction in service, or do we want it to go to Santa Barbara at that point?
Well, yeah, and we don't even know if the county will give that.
Yeah, I kind of think that they would.
They won't.
Yeah,
I-
they're
I-
gonna
They've got
wanna
the
give
three,
it to
they've
Santa
got the
Barbara.
three
Yeah.
options
Yeah.
Like I almost feel like if Galita asks the extra 50,000, I don't even want to get involved. I don't
The-
want.
James just said that it's
Oh, yeah.
not worth it.
James says they're.
Yeah, and he doesn't think, but again, he's one director. You know?
He said they withdrew it on Friday.
Oh, I forgot that.
Yeah.
So you want to do the two paths, like if Goleta does 20, we
Yes.
support them. If they don't do 20, we support Santa Barbara. Either way, we support us getting money.
Yeah,
But carefully worded. Support
Carefully
Santa Barbara
worded.
temporarily and
Yeah.
try to figure out how to fix relationships and bring money local.
yeah, I'm just, I shouldn't say this publicly, but I just will. I just really hate this process, and I hate that this has happened so fast and that we have to react to decision, and we didn't even have the Santa Barbara Public Library people here to talk
I
about
invited.
their proposal. I know, but that's my point. It's like, how can we, how is this even viable when as a board, we have no information other than what have we been given on paper? It's just, it's an unsavory process.
If Galita wants to go for 10, I almost want, rather than to take away the money from Galita from them for a year and give it to Santa Barbara and then try to figure something else out later, and just, you know, I almost want to leave it with Galita, but just push hard to take the money next year.
If they go to
Yeah,
10.
because like even if it's a
I
10.
see what you're
and
saying.
The reason why
Yeah,
is that I don't want to like mess with all the Galita process and also lose our board seat over at Galita and over the
yeah.
1 year of like, but I want to use that instead as a chip for trying to.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You can
Maybe
always
that's
use
what we
Santa
do.
Barbara next
Yeah,
year.
that makes sense.
I understand that, yeah.
Keep with Galita, and also remember, there's leadership change at Galita. We have an opportunity to work with the new librarian. You were on that commission,
Mhm.
so you're probably gonna be on the interview panel with that possibly. So you're welcome. So, you know, I support that as well. I think we just don't want service interruptions, and maybe continuity of service with Galita, even if it's less, is
Yeah.
better than the
Yes.
disruption of going with Santa Barbara Public Library.
That's an interesting point because that will cause a service disruption in some form.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Right.
What if it's 5 hours? I said 10 hours.
That's where
5
they're.
hours? I'm almost able to do Galita for 5 hours, but we do other people want. We do Santa Barbara.
You know, if we got 5 hours, and Galita didn't vote for increased funding, it just gives further impetus to our cause to get our funding back here,
Mhm.
right?
Do we want to
It's-
leave the money with them for a year, or do we want to do the thing where we try to bring it to Santa Barbara for a year?
I think I'd rather leave it.
Okay. So now it's sounding like, right from Marcos, do you have a?
Yeah, when I think about like the political move of like the impetus to later in the future get that money, I feel like we have more power, more argumentative weight if we leave the dollars with Goleta and we get underserved.
Yeah, I agree. Because if Santa Barbara Public Library starts getting this funding, we may never get it. It's very possible, right? I
I
mean,
mean, we could always get it back in a year, like, oh, it didn't work out.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It just, this whole process feels like no one really cares what IVCSD thinks. That's how I feel about this process, just how we're noticed late. It
Mhm.
doesn't, and then this funny proposal comes out of nowhere. It doesn't feel like they're
apart.
they
in
really
our
care
own
what we think.
future.
Yeah, I think they're using us in some sense as a pawn in it. It's like they want to get the letter from us to support something, so they have a threat to believe it. Not because they actually want to know.
You know, forget the water wars, the library wars. I mean, this is intriguing as all get out.
When I ran for supervisor in 2016, I was expecting oil to be a big issue. I wasn't expecting libraries to be a big issue. Because it wasn't, it was a big issue.
Okay.
So
I
is
think
it-
our librarian
I
should
think-
make. a
I
motion.
think we're.
So-
I don't know if
So
we
is
can-
the motion to support maintaining services with the city of Goleta and direct the library ad hoc committee to negotiate with the county to transfer per capita library funding IVCSD in the next fiscal year.
Yes.
That's it.
Do we want to say 20 hours in there or not? You didn't say
We
20 hours.
already said 20
I heard
hours.
you guys say like you want to stick with Galita no matter what.
No, regardless, yeah.
Yeah.
We'd like, yeah, okay, okay. Is that what we think?
I think Ella had her hand.
I
up.
think
Yeah,
that's
Ella.
a
Okay.
good one.
Hurry up, Ella,
Schultz.
before you get cut off.
I don't know if we should like, I don't know if we can say it in the motion, but we could request 20 hours. Can we request 20 hours and make it very explicit that that's what we want? And if we don't get it, we'll still stick with them, but we want the 20 hours? Is that something we can put in the motion or not?
Ella, I think you should start over. It's up. Now we can hear you. Now we can hear you if you want to start over.
Sorry. Is it possible to put in the motion that we prefer 20 hours, even if we'll stick with the Goleta either way, but if we can get 20 hours, that is
Yeah.
the ideal outcome? Because I
like
feel like
that.
we should
I
make
think
it
we
very
should-
clear that we want 20 hours, if it's possible.
You keep
I heard
getting
very
cut
clear
off,
20
Yeah.
hours.
but I think you
Just
said we should put that we want 20.
Restate that we do think we should have 20 hours.
Yeah.
As we said in our former letter.
Yeah.
So it's just, we're still consistent
Yeah.
with that.
Jonathan, you'll be at the meeting and you'll speak on behalf of the IVCSD?
Yeah,
The three of us will be there tomorrow.
Oh, the three of you. Are you guys really?
Yeah.
I'm gonna consider.
All right. Well, I sent you the motion. I think that matches what you were saying. Okay, she said yes. So, oh, who's the first and second on the motion?
Sorry?
Who wants to be the first?
Who wants to
and
be the
second
first
on
and
the
who wants
motion?
We
to be the
sent
second?
somebody on our library committee would be the first.
I'll move.
Okay. Is there a second for this motion? Okay, we have a second from
I beat
Director
you.
Deschler. Is there any public comment on this motion? Lord. Hear no public comment. Is there any further board comment on this motion? I hear none. Jonathan, could you please read the motion?
Yes, I'll restate the
job.
What is
motion.
it that I moved?
It says motion to support maintaining services with the library services with the city of Goleta with 20 hours a week and direct the library ad hoc committee to negotiate with the county to transfer per capita library funding to the IVCSD in the next fiscal year.
Do we say
Oh.
20 hours preferred?
Yeah, yes. So my impression was that because if I were to hear that, it would make me think that it's like, okay, you support that, but they're not going to give you 20 hours. So we're not gonna-
Preferred, okay,
we're gonna
so
do what you
preferred.
want. Yeah. So if it's the 20 hours preferred, but like it's almost they're separate thoughts, you know. They like so it's like we support library services with the city of Goleta. Separate to that, we make a statement that we really want 20 hours a week.
We
But
want
that's
to
separate.
continue.
Yeah, continue 20 hours a week, but that is separate. Like we actually, it's almost in the other order. It's like we would like the first thing is that we wish to continue having 20 hours a week service of the book ban. But even if that were not to be something that is possible, we support having the city of Goleta be the person that we give the library service money to.
I hope that's not the motion.
I mean,
That's
I think
not-
the
that's-
motion, you can
what
say
did you
that
say?
without that
Because it
being
was
the
just
motion.
wordy.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah.
I think the motion still captures that, which is maintain Goleta
Yeah.
with this much preferred. But
Yeah.
we can
I
state
think
it at the
does
meeting in the way you stated it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Everyone is good with the motion as read?
Yeah, because I think if the focus is so much on 20 hours, then they'll parse that and say, we can go with the city of Santa Barbara. So I think that linking city of Goleta and the 20 hours is important. And you can talk about the continuity of services.
Yeah, and I'll
Because I
send
think
it,
it's-
I'll send the motion to Goleta now, like their
Yeah.
meeting's
They'll-
about to start, but they'll know that that's.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Jonathan, can I have a roll call vote on this motion?
Director
Can I
Aguilar?
just say, I haven't, I just want
Okay,
to,
please.
what if we said something like, we want to continue to work with the city of Goleta? What did you write?
Support maintaining
Okay,
library
fine, fine.
services.
Okay, I'm done. I'm sorry.
It's just the width of 20 makes it sound like we support this conditionally on the 20 hours, but then it's
Yeah.
preferred. What does it mean to be preferred? And the whole thing is preferred, or like, that's how
Well, I
it's
think
just, so I wanted, I was trying to
we want that
separate.
relationship. So
We want to
that's where
maintain
we-
Goleta,
Yeah.
and that's
and
period.
What we
Separate
prefer
from
to
that.
get from that relationship is 20 hours. I think it works. I think it is
I think
accurate
it works.
statement.
Jonathan is gonna do a great job tomorrow. And you guys are gonna be there.
Yes,
Yeah.
the three of us will
We'll
be
be
there.
fine.
Preferring 20 hours.
Yeah, preferring 20 hours.
So we take
It'll
out
be
the-
fine. It'll be awesome. Let's go.
Okay, Jonathan, can I
Roll call.
please now have a roll
Yeah,
call? vote?
Director Aguilar,
Yes.
Toppler,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Deschler,
Yes.
Schultz.
Yes.
All right, thank you. This motion passes 5-0-0-2. And that concludes our discussion and action items. Staff, thank you very much for wrangling us.
Oh, thank you for
Thank you.
taking
Thank
the
you.
time.
I want to thank, the city of Goleta for having one representative here. That means a lot. And now I'd like to move on to our future meeting date and future agenda items. The next regular meeting of the Board of Directors will take place on Tuesday, June 27th. That's next Tuesday.
All right.
All right, thank you, everyone. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah. it is so good.
And I'll remember, Jay, we'll turn that off.
Fun we had, didn't we, today?
Close the